Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Learning Israel webinar program. I'm your host, Rabbi Ari Enkin, coming to you live from Beit Shemesh, Israel. As we do each and every class, please sign in, let me know your name, where you're listening in from, and please confirm that you see the first slide and you can hear me clearly, and we will get going in just a moment. Thank you, Miriam from England, for checking in, and Marilyn and Shifarao, welcome this evening, everybody. We got some people logging in right now as I speak. Rotterdam, welcome. Everything's visible. Dave in New York, you hear me okay? You can see that first slide. Dave from New York. Welcome, Joe in Florida. Great to have you. Barcelona's here as usual. Francisco, welcome. Okay, David's confirmed that he can hear me. Then if he can hear me in Florida, I think you can hear me everywhere in the world. So on that note, let's get going on our Genesis class. Today we'll be focusing a lot on the story of Sodom, in English Sodom, but I'll be using the Hebrew more, Stom. Remember, Sodom in English is Stom in Hebrew. So we're going to be talking mostly, but not only, on the story of Sodom. We have some people just checking in right now. We've got the latecomers popping into the classroom. Welcome, Tudor from Montreal. Bonsoir, as they say in your part of the world. Okay. So we're picking up over here, Genesis 14. After the war involving the king of Sodom, there were other kings as well. It was the 4 kings against the 5 kings. Check it in your closest Bible, Genesis 14. So we have a tradition. There's a tradition in Jewish folklore, in the texts, that somebody escaped the war with the kings. We know somebody escaped, that the Torah tells us, and told Abraham that his nephew Lot was captured. We know that Abraham goes and saves Lot. Maybe we'll get back into that in a moment. But the Torah doesn't tell us who's the individual that went to Avram to tell him that his nephew was captured. The Torah just tells us the word hapalit, which I translate for you in your slide as the escapee. So as mentioned, Jewish tradition seems to say that the person who went to Avram to tell him that Lot was captured was none other than the infamous Og, the future king of Bashan. Og of Bashan. And why is he called the escapee, our sages discuss? Why does the Torah only say escapee without giving the full name? To tell us that Og was the sole survivor from the days of Noah and the flood. Yes, that's right. We were all grown up, led to believe that the whole world perished during the flood of Noah, except for those who were on the ark. Well, that's not completely true. Og, the king of Bashan, future king of Bashan, also survived the floods of Noah, the flood of the world. How? Because he was holding on to the back of the ark. That's right. However, the rabbis tell us that Og had very, very distasteful, undignified intentions, to say the least, for going to Abraham. He didn't do it because he's a nice guy. You know why Og went to Abraham to tell him that Lot was captured, knowing that Abraham would go after Lot to try and get him back, fight the kings to redeem his nephew? You know why Og tells Abraham this? Not because he wants to save Lot. Og doesn't give a darn about Lot. What happened? What Og was planning was that when Abraham goes to fight for Lot, to go and redeem Lot from captivity, which was, by the way, in the area of Damascus, Og would take Sarah, Avram's wife, for himself. Filthy, filthy, filthy intention. Sounds very nice. Og is seemingly trying to save Lot, goes and tells Avram that Lot was captured. Avram goes and saves Lot, and everything you would think is happily ever after. But no, Og's intention was horribly immoral. He wanted to get his hands on Sarah when Abraham leaves Israel and goes to Damascus to fight for Lot. But nevertheless, get this, friends, get this. The Talmud tells us that many, many, many years later, God had to reassure Moses, many, many years later after the Jews left Egypt and Moses was wandering the desert, and the Jewish people were about to face a battle with Og, Moses had to be reassured by God that he would win the war. Because Moses was worried that Og had some kind of spiritual merit that would make him victorious over Moses and the Jewish people. What is that spiritual merit? Very simple. The merit in having come and told Avram that Lot was captured. But wait a second. Og's intentions were horrible. Og's intentions were immoral. So how could it be that God would give Og merit? God would give Og credit to the extent that it might bring Og victory over Moses and the Jewish people. How is it possible? It makes no sense. Sure, there might have been a good deed involved and some good came out of it, that Og went and told Abraham that Lot was captured, so Abraham went and saved him. But the intentions of Og were horrible. How could that act serve as a merit for Og, that he should be victorious over Moses and the Jewish people? God had to calm Moses down. Moses was scared to go to war against Og because of the merit that Og had. God had to calm him down. God had to reassure him that he would be victorious against Og. Wow. So what do you see over here? It's pointed out. The fact that Moses was concerned that Og might be victorious over Moses and the Jewish people in merit of him having gone to tell Abraham that Lot was captured, even though it was done with such immoral intentions, here's the point, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the take home. That's how far God's kindness and mercy extends to us. That when we do a good deed, even when it's for the wrong intentions, God still gives us credit. Og had diabolical motives. But since Og was ultimately responsible for Lot being redeemed and Lot returning home, God indeed put that to Og's credit. Yes, his intentions were horrible. But that is the extent of God's kindness when we do good deeds, even when there are ulterior motives. Not that that's something to brag home about, but when we do good deeds, God gives us credit no matter what our intentions are. This is a great lesson regarding the power of a single mitzvah, of a single good deed, no matter why you do it. As we see in this slide on your screen, good deeds, great returns. Let's go on to our next slide over here. And this idea of doing a good deed, no matter what the intention, and reaping rewards for it, I'm going to share with you a story that helps really hit home that idea. It's a true story from the Holocaust. There was once a family during the Holocaust era. Their last name was Hiller. And the Hiller family was a mother, a father, and a little boy. And the little boy Hiller, his name was Shachne, an old Yiddish name. You don't find too many Jews today with the name Shachne. Now, the Hillers lived in Krakow, and the year was 1942. And at that time, the Germans were drafting all able-bodied people into work, into labor force. Those that were strong were able to survive as slaves to the Nazis. Children, as a general rule, didn't make it. They didn't make the cut. They weren't strong enough to work for the Nazis. The Nazis couldn't get too many miles. There wasn't good mileage out of the kids, and so they were sent to the gas chambers. The Hillers knew that they were going to face this problem because little Shachne was indeed little. The family didn't know what to do with their son, how to save him, would he be killed? The situation deteriorated to such an extent that they realized that their only option, if they wanted their son to survive the war, was to give their son to a non-Jewish family that they knew in Krakow. And this non-Jewish family, we know their name? Their name was Yakovich, a Christian Polish family. The Yakoviches had no children, but the Hillers and the Yakoviches were great friends. They trusted each other, and they decided that it would be a good match based on the fact that they trusted the Yakoviches and that they were childless. They would give little Shachne over to the Yakovich family where he would be safe, where he might survive the war. And on the night of November 15th, 1942, Mrs. Hiller, at risk to her life, walked out of the Jewish quarter of Krakow to the non-Jewish neighborhoods of Krakow and brought her child to Mrs. Yakovich. And when she did so, Mrs. Hiller told her, if we ever make it through the war, please return our child to us. But if we do not make it through the war, here are 2 letters with addresses. One address is to our family in Montreal, Canada, and the other address is to family in Washington, D.C. in the USA. When this terrible war is over, please contact them and they will take back Shachne. We have one request. Please raise Shachne as a Jew. Please raise Shachne as a Jew. And they parted ways. Shachne seemed to be safe with the non-Jewish family, and the Hillers were murdered in the Holocaust, along with 6 million other Jews. Mrs. Yakovich took good care of Shachne. She raised a child as if it was her own. And Mrs. Yakovich, who was a religious Catholic, started taking the child to Mass. And after a while, the child, of course, knew the service, knew the religion, knew the hymns, and he was like a Christian. He essentially lived the life of a Catholic and was a Catholic. In 1946, Mrs. Yakovich decided that it was time to baptize the child. To baptize the child. And she took the child to the local priest. And she asked him, can you please baptize this child? Now the priest, seeing the 10 or 11-year-old boy, wondered, how was it possible that a boy of this age was not already baptized? And this priest asked Mrs. Yakovich a whole bunch of questions, and the story behind the child became quite clear. Bear with me. Get ready for this one. The priest told her that she was acting improperly. The parents asked that the child be raised as a Jew, and the dying wishes of the boy's family must be honored. And after this discussion with the local priest, Mrs. Yakovich did the right thing. She had second thoughts, and she contacted these families in North America. And finally, in June 1949, through the efforts of the Canadian Jewish Congress, this child, together with 13 other orphans, survivors from Poland, came to Canada. Ultimately, in February 1951, through a special bill signed by President Truman, this boy came to the United States and lived with his family in Washington, D.C. The lad grew up in the United States of America, but kept in touch with Mrs. Yakovich, his foster mother, to whom he felt sincerely indebted. He sent her letters, packages, and even money. He now grew up as a religious Jew. and he became the vice president of a large corporation. He did very well for himself and still always had a debt of gratitude to Mrs. Yakovich. In 1978, Mrs. Yakovich, who was getting older in years, wrote a letter to him telling him for the first time of her terrible dilemma and her initial decision to have him baptized. In that letter, my friends, she revealed the name of the local priest who convinced her that she was doing the wrong thing. His name was Karol Wojtyla, who is later known as Pope John Paul II. My friends, we have a lot of issues with the Catholic Church, make no mistake, but we have to give credit where credit is due. Pope John Paul II could have just taken this boy and just covered him in the world of Catholicism, brought him in, and the truth would never be known. But Pope John Paul was a man of truth and a man of justice, and believed that what was right and what was wrong, no matter what his personal beliefs were. The great Rabbi Israel Spira, who died in 1989, he said that although we don't know God's ways, we can perhaps speculate that God chose to reward this young priest in the role of Pope in appreciation, with credit for saving this boy and keeping him Jewish. We never know, my friends, where one good deed will lead. Perhaps this one good deed of the priest Karol Wojtyla was the merit that got him the top job in the Catholic Church. We never know where our good deeds are going to take us. I'm going to tell you, back to the Parsha now, back to the Genesis story. Torah tells us that when Abraham came down to Egypt, he told Sarah, say that you are my sister. He tells Sarah, when they get to Egypt, say that you are my sister. And we know why he did this. We spoke about this in previous classes. Sarah was very, very beautiful. And Abraham was worried that when they get to the Egyptian border, Sarah would be kidnapped, taken to Pharaoh, for Pharaoh to do as he pleases with the beautiful Sarah, and Abram would be killed. Because Pharaoh would never sleep with a married woman. That would be immoral. Pharaoh would never sleep with a married woman. That would be immoral. So if she was married, it's quite simple how to solve the problem. If Pharaoh wanted to sleep with a certain woman who was married, simply kill the husband. Simply kill the husband. It's so easy. Now she's no longer married. And Avram was right. They get to the border. Sarah's beautiful. They say, whoa, this woman is for the king. They ask, what's your relation to this man? She says, it's my brother. I'm his sister. And indeed, Avram was spared, even given gifts. And Sarah was taken to the palace. If Avram would have said, I'm the husband, he would have been killed on the spot. Now the Medrash says on this verse, where Abraham tells Sarah to say, you are my sister, that the Medrash tells us that there were two personalities in the Bible, in the Tanakh, that were the main characters of a story, but they made themselves secondary, and as a result, they in fact did become secondary. Who are these two people that made this error, this mistake? Abraham and this Barak ben Avinoam, Barak in the story of Devorah. We all know the story that Devorah in the Bible, in the book of Judges, chapter 4, came to Barak, and Devorah told Barak, go out, battle Sisera, you'll be victorious, the Jews need you, go for it. But he tells Devorah, no, I'm not going to battle alone, I'm only going to go out to war if you come with me. Medrash tells us that because he said this, because he made this request, he became secondary and Devorah became primary. How do we see that? The verse says, and Devorah and Barak sang When they won the war, they sang a song of praise to God. And the verse says, Dvorah and Barak. Dvorah comes first, Barak comes second. Barak was supposed to be the main character, leading the Jewish people into battle, but he hesitated. He needed support, quote unquote. And so he became secondary. Dvorah took the day. And so to Avram over here in Genesis, our main character was the top guy. But he tells Sarah, say you're my sister, so that it will be good with me. For your sake, I will live. And so because he put all the initiative on Sarah, he became secondary. As the verse says, and Avram was given goods. Avram was given gifts and goods because of Sarah. Barak becomes secondary because he goes to seek and rely on someone else, not rely on his own talents. And Abraham becomes secondary because he too goes and relies on someone else and does not rely on his own talents. The Medrash is telling us a powerful lesson over here. The commentators tell us this is an open rebuke against false modesty. When one is supposed to take charge, take leadership, take initiative, you should not claim that you are not worthy. Don't claim you can't do it. Sometimes you should not shun the limelight. Modesty, my friends, does not mean denying one's talents and one's role. Modesty means to know one's talents and one's role, but to know that it's not my strength and the power of my hand that made me successful. It's all from God. The Medrash is telling us that if you have these strengths, when you have leadership, when you have initiative, when you have abilities and talents, and you are thrown and intended to be the leader, the main role, if you fail to rise to the occasion, then you become different. You lose those talents. You lose those benefits and rewards. You lose the strengths that you had. God gives each and every one of us different gifts and different strengths. There are occasions that call for us to take charge, to be the main character, to be the leader, to be the top guy, to cop out because you might think you're not worthy or you can't do it, is false modesty. My friends, the message over here that we learn from Abraham's error and from Barak's error is that if the moment calls from greatness, we must rise to the challenge. Okay, next slide. Next teaching, next lesson. Another midrashic teaching. The Midrash tells us, in the name of Rabbi Levi, there are 2 times in the Torah that the words lech lecha are used. One of our readers, one of our not readers, one of our members, one of the people watching our presentations, sent me an email recently and said, I like when you share the Hebrew words. I get many emails every week, and forgive me, I forget exactly who sent me that email, but somebody on our program this evening sent me an email saying, I like when you give us Hebrew words and teach us how to pronounce them and tell us what they mean. Well, I'm doing that right now. Twice in the Torah says, lech lecha, lech lecha, go, lech lecha, go, get out of here. It's a pressing situation to leave. And Rabbi Levi in the Medrash says, we see the words lech lecha used twice, and we don't know which of those 2 instances is God's favorite. The first time the words lech lecha appear is when God tells Abraham, lech lecha, go out from your land and go to the Holy Land. That's what we know. Go to the Holy Land. Lech lecha. That's the first time we see the words lech lecha in the Torah. The second time we see the word lech lecha is when Abraham is told to sacrifice Isaac, the event we call the Akedah, or Akedat Yitzchak, the sacrifice of Isaac, or the binding of Isaac. where Avram is told again, Lech Lecha, go to the land of Moriah, that's Jerusalem, and offer Isaac on one of the mountains. So we don't know which Lech Lecha, which event is more beloved in God's eyes. Was it the event where Avram leaves his hometown and goes to the land of Israel? Or is it the event when God tells Abraham to take Isaac for a sacrifice? And Rav Levi in the Medrash concludes that the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac, was a greater test, and hence more beloved, than the test of Abraham leaving his homeland. As we see the second time the words Lech Lecha are used, are more precious to God. So the question is, it's actually quite strange that Rav Levi was even puzzled by this question. Why would anyone think that the test of leaving one's home, when God told Avram to get out of your home to go to a new land, why would anyone think that that is such a hard test? I mean, face it. Look at all the gifts that God promised Abraham if he would go to the land of Israel. The wealth, the fame, the children, the nations, the land. It's just endless. And then on the other hand, God tells Avram to kill his only son. Of course, the test of having to kill your only son is more difficult, and hence more beloved in God's eyes. What's going on here? Why was Rav Levi even puzzled? Why did he even ask the question, which is the greater test? Of course, sacrificing your child is the greatest test. Far more serious than moving homes, even moving countries. What's going on over here? Why is there a discussion over which is more difficult? Moving homes or slaughtering your son? And it's explained, my friends, that of course the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac, was a very difficult test. But the difference between the sacrifice of Isaac and leaving your home is that the sacrifice of Isaac was a one-shot affair. Avram was called upon to ascend the mountain, sacrifice Isaac, and it's over. The test is a 1, 2, or 10-minute event. Kill Isaac, it's done. However, the test of Abraham, of Lech Lecha, of leaving his homeland to go live in a new place, is not a one-shot affair. It's not a 10-minute test. It's a test that lasts an entire life. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone has his own personal journey in life. And all of us have to use our life, we have to use each and every hour, each and every day of bringing completeness to our souls, bringing fulfillment to our lives, getting close to God, quality, meaning, happiness. And we have to work on ourselves in our own personal fashion. And this was the charge of Lech Lecha. When God tells Abraham, Lech Lecha, go out of here, go for yourself, there's a deeper message, my friends. It's not just Lech Lecha, it's Lech Lecha. Go in your own way. You're not just making a physical journey from Iraq to Israel. You're beginning a personal journey that takes a lifetime. Many times this charge requires getting out of the box, getting out of one's environment, one's society, one's family. We all have baggage in life. Emotional baggage, financial baggage, genetic baggage, family baggage, all kinds of baggage. Sometimes baggage is helpful, and sometimes baggage can be a handicap. When a person is given a mission in life and a goal to accomplish, it may involve the need to rid himself of so much of the baggage that he came with. In Avram's case, he had to get rid of his land, his birthplace, his family. Such a challenge is not a one-shot deal. It's lifelong. And my friends, life is a journey. It's not a destination. we all have to work on our personal journey and get ourselves better, happier, more fulfilled, close to God, better parents, better spouses, better children. That's our job, my friends. Lech lecha. Go on your personal journey. Don't ever forget every day that we're on a personal journey. May you be successful. We're going to go focus more now back on the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, or Sodom and Amorah in Hebrew. Prior to the destruction of Sodom and Amorah, remember, they were very, 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 very evil. God decided he's going to destroy Sodom and Amorah. And prior to the destruction of Sodom and Amorah, an angel was sent to essentially save one person from the destruction of Sodom and the region. This was Lot. Lot, Abram's nephew, was intended to be saved from the destruction of Sodom. Not only Lot, but also his family. And the angel went to save Lot and his 2 daughters and his wife. And the angels were leading them out of Sodom. And the angels told Lot and his family, don't look back. Sodom is about to be destroyed. You're going to be saved. Do not look back and see the misfortune of all your former neighbors and friends in Sodom. And Lot's wife didn't listen. And she looked back. She looked back to see the destruction of Sodom, and as a result, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Lot and his 2 daughters then fled to a cave where they hid in fear. They didn't realize, Lot and his daughters, that only Sodom and Amorah were destroyed. They were under the impression that the entire world was destroyed. They didn't realize it was a very localized destruction. They thought it was like another flood where God destroyed the world. This was a nuclear bomb, so to speak, and nuclear boom that not only destroyed Sodom and Amorah, but destroyed the entire world as well. Hence, Lot and his daughters believed that they were the only people left in the world. The only people left in the world. Lot's older daughter urged the younger daughter that since they were the only people left in the world, there was nobody else around, and the human race must go on, they had no choice but to commit incest with their father. They had to perpetuate the human race. There's nobody else left in the world. Their father was a man, they were women, so we've got to start the world anew right now. And they gave their father lots of wine, and they had relations with the father, and each one successfully got pregnant. And each one gave birth to a boy. One boy was named Moab, and the other boy was named Ammon. That's right. The Moabites and the Ammonites come from Lot's daughters who got pregnant from their father. Torah tells us, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the congregation of Hashem, the congregation of God. Even their 10th generation shall not enter the congregation of God. To eternity. That means Ammonites and Moabites may not convert to Judaism. They are one of the few nations that may not convert. Why? Why are they banned from the Jewish people? Because of the fact that they did not greet you with bread and water when you were on the road when you left Egypt. Wow. A Moabite and an Ammonite may not convert to Judaism. Not because they're the result of an immoral relationship, a result of the incestuous relationship. If these nations could behave in such a cruel and insensitive manner towards the Jews, then they are not accepted to join the Jews. Wow. So the question is asked, is this good enough reason to shun the Moabites and the Ammonites, they were not hospitable. They didn't give us food. You're right, that's pretty bad. Slaves, redeemed, wandering the desert, 40 years. It'd be nice to give them a glass of water. But is that truly the reason why Ammonites and Moabites are forever banned from the Jewish people? I'm getting asked a question right now. There's a question coming in from Joe. What about Ruth? We all know the story of Ruth. If you don't, take out a Bible, look up the book of Ruth. And indeed, Joe asks, wait, Ruth was a Moabite. And she converted to Judaism. But the Torah seems to say right here on our slide that Moabites, Ammonites may not convert to Judaism. So how is it possible that Ruth converted and became a great Jew and became the grandmother of King David? And the answer, Joe, is because the ban on Moabites and Ammonites converting to the Jewish people applies only to the males, not to the females. Female Moabites were permitted to convert. So back to our question, why are the Moabites banned from the Jewish people? Is it simply because of their inhospitality? So the answer is like this. The story of Lot's daughters having relations with their father raises some obvious questions. As I mentioned, Lot's daughters legitimately believed that the world had come to an end, and they needed to perpetuate the human race. The only way to do that is to have relations with their father. And by the way, just as Cain and Abel were permitted to have relations with their sisters, otherwise mankind wouldn't be here today, so too Lot's daughters took that cue to cohabit with their father under similar circumstances. Chazal, which means our sages in Hebrew, Chazal teach us regarding Cain and Abel that existence could not have been perpetuated if they had not been permitted to have relations with their sisters. However, there's an obvious difference between the two cases. There's an obvious difference. Listen to this. In the case with Lot's daughters, they had a very special uncle. His name was Avraham. When Lot's father was killed, Avraham adopted him as his own son. When Avraham left Ur-Kasdim, when Avraham left Iraq, Babylon, to come to Israel, he brought Lot along with him. When Avraham went to Egypt, he brought Lot along with him. When he left Egypt back to Israel with his great wealth, he brought Lot along with him. Abraham was essentially the foster parent of Lot. But one day, Lot and Abraham had to separate. And we learned about that in a previous class. One day, the shepherds of Lot and the shepherds of Abraham arose, and they had a disagreement, they had a fight, and hence Lot and Abram separated. But nevertheless, as mentioned, when Lot was taken captive, Abram put aside their differences and went to save him. If it was not for Abraham's sacrifice, Lot would probably be dead in a Damascus jail. With this degree of selflessness demonstrated by Abraham, one would think that Lot should have been completely beholden to him. Lot should have shown a lot more appreciation to him. However, we find that this is not the case. If Lot had appreciated what his uncle had done for him all his life, he would have told his family. He would have told his daughters about the great uncle that he had. So how do we know that Lot did not tell his daughters about the great uncle that he had? This can be deduced by the behavior of Lot's daughters. Their only justification for having an incestuous relationship with their father was because they believed that the world had ended. However, if they would have known about their uncle Abraham, the most righteous man in the world, a man who talked with God, they would never have believed that Abraham would have been killed while their father Lot would have been saved. They would have realized that there must be another man alive. If my father Lot can be saved, for sure Abraham would be saved. They could have sent him an email. They could have sent him a postcard. Hence we see that Lot never told his family about his great uncle. Why? Because Lot didn't know how to show appreciation. He never recognized all the good that Abraham had done for him. His life, his wealth, his social status was all thanks to Abraham. Lot did not wish to acknowledge this. Lot did not wish to acknowledge this. And therefore, he did not share it with his children. Unbelievable. Lot exemplifies the person who does not have the capacity to appreciate the goodness that others do for him, and others do for you. The Moabites and the Ammonites were direct descendants of Lot. They should have had a sense of gratitude to the Jewish people who descended from Abraham. There was a debt to be paid which they did not understand. And therefore, because they saw no basis for reciprocation to the Jewish people, they did not offer them bread and water when they were traveling in the desert. Their position, the Moabites and the Ammonites' position as ingrates, was a manifestation of Lot's lack of appreciation. The basic principle underlying the service of God is to show appreciation. That's what God wants us to do to our fellow man. God loves when we show appreciation. Lot and his descendants do not have this quality. Their lack of gratitude is against everything the Jewish people believe in, and therefore they cannot join the Jewish people because it's in their DNA. The men, Joe, the men. It's in the DNA of the Moabite men and Ammonite men not to show appreciation, and therefore they are banned from joining the Jewish people because a Jew must show appreciation. And that's why this, my friends, is a deeper message as to why the Ammonites and Moabites could not join the Jewish people. Because they have from their forefather Lot a lack. They're missing a DNA. They're missing an Adam called appreciation. And therefore they can never, ever join the Jewish people. On to the next teaching. The Torah tells us that before God destroyed Sodom, he informed Abraham of his plans. And Abraham immediately beseeched God to reconsider, not to destroy the evil city. Abraham said, maybe there's some righteous people living there. We've discussed this question in the past in different webinars, in our weekly Torah portion webinar, in the Genesis webinar. Abraham tries to have Sodom and Amorah saved. As the Torah states, Abraham asks God, will you also stamp out the righteous along with the wicked? What if there should be 50 righteous people in the midst of the city? Would you still stamp it out? The Torah tells us that Avram pleaded back and forth with God until it was determined that there were no righteous people in Sodom, and God simply had no choice but to destroy Sodom and Amorah. And the question is asked, why did Abraham beseech God to save Sodom? The Torah tells us they were huge sinners. They were evil. They were the worst of the worst. But Rashi, the great commentator, cites our sages who explain that the people of Sodom recognized God and yet they defied him. That indeed is the worst type of evil. Avram was a righteous. He was what we call a tzaddik, a righteous man who devoted his life to espousing the existence of Hashem, the existence of God. And the question is, why would Abraham intercede on behalf of Sodom? King Solomon tells us in the book of Proverbs, when the evil are destroyed, it calls for rejoicing. We should be happy when the evil is destroyed, when evildoers are removed from the world. So why was Abraham beseeching God to save the evildoers? If we're told that the death of evil is good, why was Abraham not rejoicing when he heard that God would destroy Sodom? Many, many answers are given to this question. I'm going to share one with you right now. And that is the reason Abraham wanted to spare Sodom, have them saved. The Talmud says that one of the reasons why the Jewish people experienced 210 years of bondage in Egypt, why were the Jewish people made to be slaves in Egypt? Because Abraham, get this, the Talmud says one of the reasons the Jews were slaves, get this, is because Abraham did not take advantage of an opportunity. He did not take advantage of an opportunity that was presented to him after after he was victorious against the four mighty kings back in Genesis 14. The Torah tells us that after the defeat of the four mighty kings, the king of Sodom said to Abraham, "Give me the people, and you can take all the possessions for yourself." And Abram responded to the king of Sodom, "I will take nothing of yours. You keep the people, you take the possessions. I'm out of here. I'm not interested in booty." The Talmud criticizes Abram and says that Abram should have taken the people. Should have taken the people just like King of Sodom offered. Because he could take the people from Sodom and he could have converted them to monotheism. He could have brought them under the wings of the divine presence. He could have taught them about the God, creator of heaven and earth, the God of Israel. He could have taken away their pagan beliefs. And since Abram didn't take advantage of this opportunity, since Abram allowed the people of Sodom to remain pagans, the Jewish people were doomed to become themselves pagans as slaves in Egypt. And therefore, when God informed Abram now that he was about to destroy Sodom, Abraham mistakenly believed that God was now giving him the opportunity to correct his faults, to correct his failing regarding the people of Sodom. He believed that there would be an opportunity for them to come under his influence and become monotheistic at this time. But if it were not for Avram's shortcomings, Sodom may have indeed become monotheistic and not needed to be destroyed. If Avram would have converted them way back when the king of Sodom offered him the opportunity, he would have jumped at the opportunity to preach God, to influence people to believe in the one God of Israel. Well, maybe Jewish people wouldn't have been slaves. Wow. So this is a very unique answer that criticizes Avram, a unique answer that criticizes Avram, that he should have tried to convert the people of Sodom. Because he didn't, the Jewish people were punished and became themselves pagans in Egypt as slaves to Pharaoh. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop here and continue our teachings and talks about Sodom and more about the book of Genesis next week in our next class next Tuesday. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you. Thank you for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. I hope you believe and strengthen your belief and your faith in the God of Israel. And remember, there's only one book where every word is truth. That is the Bible. It should be available on your shelf at home. God bless you all. I'm Rabbi Enkin saying shalom ulehitraot. Until next week, see you next week at our next webinar. Lehitraot. Shalom, shalom.